Hi folks, welcome to EduTech 2021. Today I'm going to look at education technology trends, futures for IT managers and what you can do about it to really drive your innovation curve at your school. So what are the big trends generally across the world? You know, there's a big issue with climate change at the minute, as we'd all agree and recognise, which has a knock-on effect with food production. And then also in the current climate with COVID, there's a lot of information there's this going on around antibiotic resistance and actually really driving pharmaceutical companies to kind of be ahead of that curve, and that's very timely at the minute in the current pandemic climate. But there's some key drivers globally when you look at some of the key global indicators that are driving us to change dramatically as a global economy, society, and technology companies. When we look in at education specifically, then we can really tie that into a couple of areas. These are the trends that we are seeing from Microsoft point of view across schools, colleges, universities, globally. We've seen big data and scaled analytics. We've seen security and privacy becoming really, really important. When we've seen lots of breaches, for example, lots of people not patching tools and technologies, remote work. We've seen a big kind of driver to kind of get IT teams to address that area. And obviously hybrid work, as well as that well-being side to this, because it's very important that we're thinking about well-being of our employees and IT managers. We've got enough on our plates at the minute already to think about in terms of implementing technologies, but actually thinking about the outcome of those technologies on well-being when people are working remotely and going in and out of lockdown or working from home is very, very important. We've seen some trends happen through COVID. Culture and well-being across companies are being kind of pushed to the fore. The skills and intensity that IT teams are going to need to move forward is increasing, and the intensity of those qualifications and certifications are becoming evident. We can see that in Microsoft, for example, where our account executives have to get Azure foundational certification. We've seen a lot move to Agile and DevOps, and we look at that in a little bit later. And then also that delivery, hybrid work and acceleration to the cloud has actually increased during COVID. Generally through education, we have to talk about what the teachers and our students want, because ultimately they are our end product at the end of our chain without the IT solutions that we are putting in place. It's important that the kids leaving our schools are prepared for work and life, and bear no bones about it. They need to understand the cloud. They need to understand office technology in terms of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. That's what the jobs are, okay? They're not into smaller niche products. We need to get them really ready for the cloud. We need to get them really ready for business. We need to get them experts at Excel, for example, and get into the economy as quickly as we can with the tools and technologies that they need. We need to think about the newer skills, which we look at in a second as well. And then also there's this push for personalized learning and high demand in education. The role of the teachers as well is becoming amplified. The fact that teachers generally are really, really being hailed as heroes during this pandemic and being able to support the all-round area of the students, really, really important, and our student relationship and the way that they connect and the tools that we use to allow them to connect. Very, very important. Creating communities is really vital. It's not about jumping on a video conferencing platform and just saying hi. It's developing community, because we know that the relationships that the kids have with the students, the deeper that relationship would be, then the more impact it has on learning, and then the more successful the students are. So we need to be generating PLCs, professional learning communities. We need to be developing rich collaborative experiences inside products like Teams, for example, and get away from the point products of just, it will dial into a meeting here, there, and everywhere. And that's the same in a corporate environment as well. And then also the opportunity that this happening. If you look at the high pace of change and the large companies of the world who are developing things, and you're looking at Apple and Microsoft and the things that we are doing to really innovate, it's looking at those technologies and seeing how that connects together. Now, what are those engines from an IT point of view? Excuse me. Well, those engines include, but are not limited to, artificial intelligence and the cloud and Internet of Things, for example. We're thinking about sustainability being an engine. What is your sustainability narrative when you're talking back to your leadership teams? Moving to the cloud is a sustainable thing to do, and it's an environmentally friendly thing to do. What is your narrative around that? It's not just about saving money, it's about saving electricity, fossil fuels, and actually outsourcing a lot of that effort into Microsoft, who are kind of pushing to really support your sustainability mission and putting a big effort into becoming carbon negative. Then you think about mixed reality and how that connects in when we're looking at remote workers, when we're looking at remote surgery, and the fact that people can't be moving around as much as they were previously. How can we connect them with them? What experiences can we set up for the students in that area, and also for augmented learning? We're doing a lot in the medical field for that. And then things like blockchain and some of the technologies that are underpinning some of the things of the future, like non-fungible tokens and things like that, and where crypto and blockchain fit into that. So that's another engine. And then also quantum computing, which is going to be a game changer, which we're going to spend some time looking at a bit today. I hate using the term game changer, but it is. So let's look at some of the real projects that are happening generally when we're looking at technology. When we're looking at cloud and tools and technologies like Azure, then it's very much around cognitive services. These are some real examples that have happened in the last year or so, where we've used drone and video cognitive services to rehabilitate parts of Kakadu with Azure Cognitive Services. We're also using that in Darwin Harbour to kind of look at the types of fish which in the water there, because you can't go in the water because it's very dangerous up in the Northern Territory and top end. So you can use some cognitive services around there. So let's break this down then. Okay, there's a lot of innovation happening. There's a lot of things happening outside education as well. So let's take time to reflect on those in the first instance, and then we look at what we can do about in my 10 top tips to try to really support your journey to meet the future, I suppose, and actually break through that ceiling. So the cloud, what is it? It's data centers from like Microsoft, for example, where you can move your workloads to. You can move simple servers, you can move large-scale data and analytics, and you're moving them from your own data centers into a tech company's data centers. Okay, really important. Again, I mentioned sustainability earlier on. Microsoft being carbon neutral by 2030, very, very big and ambitious goal. But it means that that if you are putting things in the cloud, that you can be safe in the knowledge that those things will be really driven by that sustainable goal. So you can report back to your leadership, and it's not just about, I'm going to move my infrastructure into Azure to save money, even though you can through reserved instances and hybrid use benefit. It's also about the fact that you're reducing carbon footprint, and you can go to the Microsoft sustainability calculator and actually report on that and report on your sustainability by using things like Office 365 and Azure and Dynamics. But what does that mean for us? So if you think about Xbox, and we look at this in a little detail later on when we think about innovation and keeping on that progress front, really, really important for us. You've probably seen Project xCloud that we've released recently. We've got Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, what you can see around that is clearly we using the power of the cloud and the power of big data to bring together real-time analytics, real-time weather information, and use the power of the cloud to process that. And we've had to really innovate around Xbox, because the console wars are not really going away, but actually you've got to innovate and think outside the box a little. And now we're producing Xbox in the cloud, so really, really important, and a big position for us to think about cloud computing and using that to put games in the cloud. So why do people need to go out and buy an Xbox console every year when actually you can run and spin up an extremely powerful and fast Xbox console with the latest and greatest architecture inside Microsoft Azure? So you've got to really try to think innovatively and take risks. Data centers are becoming more and more environmentally friendly as well. This is an example of how they ship in some containers in data centers. And we've even got one called Project Natic, where we've put under the water in Europe, so it can actually cool down. We're thinking of ways to cool down data centers, so we've actually put that in the sea, and as well as it actually going underwater and having that cooling, we can also use cognitive services. You can use these things as reefs, for example, and there's no maintenance. There's no oxygen getting at that hardware, for example, and there's no risk for any contaminants in there. So we're doing lots of things around our data centers to really try to support the environment as well. And there's even some cognitive services you can see here with some fish, for example, swimming around on the edge of our data center that's under the water. When I'm talking about cognitive services, you're probably aware of that, but there's a lot of controversy around cognitive services and AI, and the use of, say, AI to understand your emotions, or video, or analysis of other elements. So there's a lot going on around there. Schools are using it. You're doing COVID for temperature checks, for example, to log people in when they come on site. So a lot of interest around AI, cognitive services, and some of these technologies as well, which is really exciting to see. But it's got to be done the right way. If you, a bit of a shameless plug here, but if you go to myself and Lee Hickin have a podcast, an AI for Education podcast, and we talk about the way that AI can be used in education and other circumstances as well, like the police and things like that. So the other technologies that we're looking at, we're thinking about data storage, and when we're looking at our data centers, we're thinking about the way the data can be stored, right? And storing things, for example, using femtosecond lasers to store onto quartz glass. So there's amazing innovations coming up in the storage area, because obviously, as you're probably all aware, when we're even thinking about our phones, storage and batteries are the two main kind of trends that we've seen some developments in recently. And also the architectures of chipsets now, like makers like Apple and ourselves with the Surface devices, creating our own kind of architectures based on certain paradigms like ARM and things, allow you to be more efficient with the way you kind of utilizing that electricity to therefore support battery life as well. So when we're thinking about it for the home, here's a video I'd like to show you here around HoloLens and mixed reality. what we could see from this video is, you know, a real integration of mixed reality in the home, and hopefully you understand that. It all sits inside Windows 10, and it also integrates and embeds inside a HoloLens 2 headsets as well. We're doing a lot of work with medical education around this, and there's been lots of schools in Australia that have grabbed this, used things like the mixed reality app inside Windows, using 3D Paint, and then using VR. So pretty exciting times, and it's not just gimmicky AR in the classroom. You can really develop and start to get kids on that journey of 3D modeling. So, quantum computing. Now, this really is a game changer. I'll try to explain it at the top level here. But what we're thinking about when we're thinking about quantum computing is no longer traditional classical computers where ones and zeros, your binary on and off. You've actually got qubits that can kind of actually be in the same place in the same time. Right, so things can be on and off simultaneously. So it's really interesting when we start thinking about that. And if you've been interested in Schrodinger's cat and quantum theory for a while, the idea around this analogy is that to explain the presence of something being in two states at the same time. There was a thought experiment by Schrodinger, famous scientist. Lee and I talk about it on our AI podcast, but you put the cat in a box essentially with a vial of poison, and then if the cat knocks over the vial of poison, then it'll die, otherwise it'll stay alive. So what technically is saying is you close the lid on the box and the cat is in two states. It's alive and dead, and you only capture that state when you open the box and understand what's happened inside there, whether the cat's alive or dead. There's some great explainer videos online. I know it's a bit of a mind stretch, but the idea being that rather than just in normal senses that you have a bit, a binary digit that's on or off, then you've also got now what's called a qubit. So actually it means that the state can be 1 or 0 simultaneously. Okay, so you can do multiple things at the same time. Now, there's a nice graphic here that you can see. If I build that out, when you're thinking about the pattern to the light bulb in the center, then if you were doing a classical computer, you'd go through each pathway, excuse me, a bit like drawing that out. Right to the middle, you do one pathway, another pathway, another pathway, another pathway, and keep drawing through as you go. Whereas when we build that out, quantum means that we can do that simultaneously. So you can get a solution much more quicker, which has lots of implications for things like security and encryption and banking and all our day-to-day lives. Things are going to be exponentially faster, and therefore we're going to have some amazing opportunities, but we're also going to have some amazing risks around security and, like I said, encryption and the way you can break some of the public-private key encryption, which companies are working on now. So Microsoft and a couple of other companies are working on quantum computing. We've invented Q#, a language to help you code for the future inside quantum computing. So look out for that. We've got Station Q in Sydney, which is funded by Microsoft and part of the university there, which we are doing some operations on and some development and research on to get the first in production quantum computer, which is quite exciting. So what does that mean? Let's watch this video and see where we go.
Houston, we see you. We have a go. Over.
When we talk about quantum computing, it's a completely different game.
Quantum computing will enable us to solve problems that currently take longer than the lifetime of the universe in seconds, hours, or days.
We completely reconceive the space in which we do computation.
Quantum computing is like going from crawling to going to a different planet. It's different.
It's only natural that we would want to use the world's most powerful device to combat the world's most challenging problems.
We could attack global warming.
Security,
What are the boundaries of machine learning?
fighting diseases. The possibilities of quantum computers are endless. Microsoft has the best and the brightest working on this problem.
It's really happening. Progress is very fast, and we're building a quantum computer.
What the world wants to know is what happens when we turn the machine on.
What problems will be solvable with a computer that computes in a billion parallel universes at the same time?
So technical skilling, really, really important part. We're looking at all of these technologies like quantum, for example, and cloud. How do we get upskilled? So really, really important. Microsoft's mantra is empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. IT staff are more critical than ever. You are our best friend. Okay, our technology can be complex to implement. It has a lot of governance and security features in there. It's an enterprise grade implementation. So you can't just have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing just implementing the technology willy-nilly. We've got a strategy, we've got qualifications, we've got documentation and support to help you implement the technologies that we put in place. When we're looking at the evolution of your roles, when we're thinking about some of the roles of the future that we are seeing in Microsoft and some of those new emerging roles, we're talking about data scientists, we're talking about DevOps, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about IT managers now we call cloud architects, information architects. So we can see this transition now. If you look at Microsoft jobs or jobs from any tech company, a lot around engineering, DevOps, architectures, scientists, and data scientists particularly are quite popular at the minute, where the databases of the past have been moved into Azure. People are starting to think about the way that they ingest information, really try to drive some of these things, and actually data scientists are becoming very, very sought after, as are cloud architects. So when you're thinking about learning skills, where do you go for Microsoft skills? Microsoft Learn is where we put in all of our content now, and we even amalgamating some of the education content for teachers into Microsoft Learn. We put training and events on every quarter. Reach out to your account teams. We do free training and events for all of our customers across Australia, around cloud, Dynamics, Power Platform, M365. There's also partners that run classroom experiences and official courses. So instructor-led training, people like DDLS and the like, and they do the 4-day courses, 5-day courses around M365 administration and things like that. Really important we get those qualifications. And then the certs that you get, there's a lot of online certifications that you can get now, badging, from fundamentals to then deeper level qualifications, which you can see here on our training and certifications roadmap. From a Microsoft point of view, what all of our teams need to do is get their fundamentals qualifications and then start to move up through some of these certifications. Really, really important. Have a look where your pathway might be. Mine currently is in Azure and Microsoft M365 fundamentals, and I'm building up on my AI knowledge over on the left hand side there on data and AI. I'm looking at my security qualifications around M365 as well, where we're talking about identity and things. So build those up, gain those qualifications, make sure your team is, the culture you have to have in technology is you're building up your team, and you need to get them the certifications for their next role. in Microsoft, we churn a lot. We get people to learn a lot. We get people to be really driving for their best and get as many certifications as you can. And yeah, some people might go, wow, I've got all these certs, I'm not going to go for another job somewhere else. But that's the point. We're trying to build people up. We're trying to build their careers and have a plan in place to drive that. So don't be afraid of upskilling your staff. And giving them a roadmap as well for their career. So where do you start with that? Microsoft Learn, work with your account teams, and identify your paths yourselves. When you go to Microsoft Learn, it'll ask you about your kind of role and your current role and where you'd like to go, and it gives you some ideas. So let's think about, we've talked about these drivers now being cloud, artificial intelligence, blockchain, all of these technologies, right? And that's all very well and good from an IT point of view when we're thinking about those security, posture, and hybrid work and data analytics as our big goals to be achieving personalization for the students that we're working with. But we also got to try to plan to get there. So let's try to think about ideas that can inspire you to really plan for that future. So here's my top tips, I suppose, about innovation. We need to make meaning from learning, okay? We need to be implementing tools and technologies to allow for meaningful use cases and learning to happen in an authentic way. So what tools and technologies you're implementing, it's about keeping people secure and safe, but also the fact that you want to be inspiring people with the tools and technologies you use. You want to be getting them into a community, like, for example, in teams, and connecting the dots and thinking differently. There's a lot around adoption and change management that we need to think about as well, because it's when I was an IT manager, and I was very guilty of this, I'd implemented, new versions of Office over the summer, in the holidays. Staff would go away. I'd implement the new version of Office, and I wouldn't really sit down and say, how can we change practice now? How can we start saving stuff in OneDrive? How can we really think about collaborating more effectively? Teams wasn't around then, but I'd focus around that as a hub and really think about how I create my professional learning communities. So my video conferencing, my collaboration, the way I work, the way I share, the way things are secure, the way that I can actually get around my day-to-day learning and myself, and as well as the learning for the students, is all part of that community of practice, okay? So it's about you implementing those tools and technologies and even starting to consolidate. We see lots of things in schools where teachers are using multiple tools and technologies, and we've seen the trend that people are starting to downscale and actually starting to use more effective tools and technologies. And importantly, that is underlying in a data schema underneath your tools. If you've got multiple tools and technologies, you've got two issues. One is it becomes a security nightmare to manage because people are using multiple technologies. If there's a threat, then how do you manage that? You're looking at multiple tools for MDM, and you're doing all this kind of stuff. But then, more importantly as well, underneath that is what's the data schema? So if I'm really looking at improving personalization and collaboration, then I need to be using that data to improve learning. If I've got an LMS over here, Teams over here, Zoom over here, something else here, something else there, my data is all over the shop, okay? So I need to really get on top of that. So start thinking about making meaning from your learning and start to rationalize the applications you've got. What about your IT department? What's your leadership vision? Is it clear to communicate? Microsoft's mantra is to empower everybody on the planet to achieve more, okay? So think about it as a mantra, not just a large mission statement. What's the mantra of your IT team? Is it about empowering your teachers to innovate? Is it about the students? Is it about the strategy of the school, all that? Really, really important. Is it about change? Is it about innovation? Who's accountable for that? And what about the stewardship element to that? About the governance and security, which we've all got our necks on the line for. So really, really important to think about your mantra as well. And I know that sounds a little bit soft when we're thinking about all of these tools and technologies. But if we want to innovate, we've got to call it out. We want to be the best IT team in Australia, in New South Wales. We want to lead the world. We've got school systems in Australia that are in the Microsoft Leading Countries of the World program. There's amazing practice happening in Australia, and we need to lead by example and drive some of this amazing innovation forward. Now, this one's important. It's important to you to jump to the next curve. I see regularly with the systems that I'm working with, it's hard. People are stuck in a rut. And to jump to the next curve is often hard. They might be using a particular product and they find it too hard to move or too hard to change, They might be using a particular video conferencing platform. They might be using a particular productivity platform, and they're really stagnating, and they don't realize it because they're not lifting their heads out of the parapet. Okay, you think, okay, I'm using this product, and that could be Microsoft technology as well. You're using. You have to look above and see what everybody else is doing, and see what's better and what's next, and make sure you're utilizing what you've got. Now, this is illustrated by this ice farming example here, right? How ice farming actually used to happen was you'd up in the polar regions of the globe, you'd be able to wait till winter, lots of ice is created on lakes and on mountains, and then people would chop up that ice and kind of, you can see the example here, early 1900s, make really large chunks of ice and send that, and there's a big industry made out of that, okay? Their idea of innovation at that point was, well, let's get this quicker, let's put these on horses, and the faster we can get the ice out, the better, okay? And really trying to drive that technology. So they were gradually innovating. They would jump into the next curve. When they started to jump to the next curve was then they started to go, well, let's get warehouses and actually make and chill those warehouses and make things, on bulk all through the year. Why do we have to wait till winter? Okay, and that was a major jump as well. But again, that wasn't the next curve. And when you're thinking about it now, people are making ice at home on their own, right? That was the next curve. That's the new jump. Refrigeration in your own house, and they couldn't have foreseen that. But, absolutely, those people that were doing the ice farming in the 1900s, they didn't go into refrigeration companies. Refrigeration companies came along and saw the problems and solved for that. So it's really important you jump that curve. Don't be afraid to jump. Jump onto your next curve. Ditch some products you've already got. Get to the next one. Go, you know what, I've been using this for a while. Let's stop that now and go to the next. Let's yes, teachers might be using a particular product set, but if we really want to innovate, we need to jump across there. If I want to be using data and AI in a better way to get better personalization, let's ditch this bit of software or that bit of software, and let's focus on the next bit of software that we're going to do, and we don't want to just stagnate. So jump into the next curve is very, very important. Free yourself to roll that dice is my fourth little tip here. You've got to free yourself up, and you've got to actually take that chance. It's very easy for us to sit back and go, well, teachers are not going to move, or this isn't going to happen, or, I see this a lot, and, we do have limited budgets, and it's easy for me to say, well, let's try to roll that dice and innovate, but we have to try to do that. What is the kids that you were teaching now in year 7, and I think about this from my own kids' point of view. When I was a school inspector in the UK, I used to go in and watch people's lessons quite a lot, and some people say, is that hard to do? And yeah, it is hard to do because you were kind of custodian of that teacher's environment and their teaching practice. But actually, you go in as well, when I was doing my training, as a parent, right? And as somebody who cares for those kids. And if you're going into a lesson and those kids are doing something pretty rubbish with technology, then you have to call it out. And similarly, I think sometimes we've got lots of constraints in IT, but you have to look at what you're doing and say, okay, this is going really well. This isn't, let's move it. Let's take that chance. Let's really try to innovate, and that could be around technologies, for example, like Minecraft. Some teachers are risk averse to Minecraft, not thinking about the benefits that, say, games-based technology would have on the students' outcomes, because they've got to cover the curriculum. Yeah, so some schools are starting to roll that dice already. We've got schools dropping timetables, mixing up curriculum, dropping HSC, ATAR elements, so kids can do vocational qualifications. You've got to roll that dice and have a bit of a gamble on backing yourself to innovate, to create better outcomes. And ultimately, the jobs are all on cloud. The jobs out there, are exponentially moving forward. New roles are being created, so we need to be there for the kids. Using data to guide you, obviously, really, really important, and guide your staff to drive their solutions. Is really important to have that evidence-based student agency and integrated approach. And allowing those teachers to be able to see that data is vital. So what data schemas do you have? Do you have a data warehouse that you might be using? Do you have data that comes in from multiple sources that you can aggregate together and then use BI for and put machine learning towards that? And what we've seen is an integrated approach, Obviously, it's easy for me to say from a Microsoft point of view, but if you were using M365 and you've got a data analytics tool in Azure, for example, you've got amazing access to analytics, and you can even ingest analytics from other areas as well into your data warehouse. But having the data from the students, so their integration with the tools, their access to their tools, what time they're doing their assignments, all of that, really, really important. But not on its own. That going in and correlating with students' care data, students' special education needs, really, really important. And we've seen that a lot. I'm seeing school systems, especially in the Catholic education system that I'm working in a lot at the minute. Most have got a data warehousing system set up and running, and most are looking at now consolidating on their productivity suite so that they can make the most of their personalization and their data underneath there. So when we're thinking about point 6 here, personalization, data and AI, well-being in individuals. We mentioned it at the beginning. It is really important to think about students and staff well-being using the tools like our insights tools built into the Teams platform to start to think about winding down. There's mindfulness tools embedded inside that. There's morning and afternoon commutes built inside that. So really try to focus in and drive that forward. Okay, but we are thinking about personalization, and it is important, but data and well-being is vital as well. Point 7, how do we get to this, right? We need to be thinking in an agile way, right? And COVID has shown us that we don't have to do these projects like we've done in the past, When I'm thinking of IT strategy, it's my role to support school systems to do this. Often, everybody who comes in, you get commercial people who come into school systems and they go, okay, I'm now an IT manager in a school, let's get going, I've got so much exciting things. And then they realize, a bit like a politician, it's very hard to implement change. But we know it can be done, and you've got to be agile. The kind of agile approach and agile methodology, and you can see this from companies. From Microsoft, for example, no longer are we doing big, yearly, upgrades to things. We're doing incremental upgrades. Weekly, monthly, daily in some cases, to tools and technologies to improve and fix things as we go. And it's not that agile methodology, If you want to implement, if through COVID, for example, so many school systems, so many of the colleges that I support turned on Intune and ended up and running within a week to manage their endpoints. Yeah, they didn't have a year-long process of going, oh, well, I'll try to do that, when this and when that, because of all these constraints. It was very much about this is happening, this date, we're getting this sorted, we need to be supporting people from home, we need security tight, we need to be able to have autopilot deployed so we can send out devices to teachers and they can get hydrated just by logging in to their corporate account with secure credentials, which then hydrates their machine with all the software they need. You can get things done pretty quickly. So being agile and really thinking about it, thinking about those rapid iterations, keeping moving, keeping that pace of change going. And then obviously, don't stay where you are, right? And that's what I was saying earlier on with the Xbox stuff. We could keep making Xbox consoles, as you can see down here on the right-hand side of the slide, where we started in 1999, when we released the first Xbox console, the iterations that has gone down, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, blah, blah, blah. We've had to jump that curve, right? We've had to look at cloud. Sony are not looking in that area yet. Okay, so people like Uber, people like Netflix, they're always jumping ahead of that curve, and you've got to kind of keep moving. Just sitting and stagnating, similarly, if we would have sat and stagnated on Microsoft products like the Office suite, and Google had the collaborative nature at that particular time of Google Suite and Google Education and stuff like that, then if we didn't match that and try to be better and do exactly the same things, you can collaborate online in PowerPoint, Word and Excel, and you can do all of those things, then that allowed us to innovate. It was like, right, that's a good idea. We could have just stayed there and done static documents and kept increasing the tools and technologies inside Word, but unless we actually innovated and created Office 365, then we wouldn't have been able to match and exceed some of the Google products. So you've got to innovate and you've got to think outside the box, and you've really got to try to look for the next thing. And when you're looking at companies generally with us, Microsoft, Apple, Google, whoever it might be, then think about what they are doing. How innovative are they? And it's important that we understand that as IT pros. We've got to be discerning users of technology. That also comes down to people's, I get frustrated as an IT pro when people get tied into one particular mobile device, right? For example, whether that's Android, which I use, or Apple, which some of my kids use, it's about selecting the best devices for those products, right? For the things you're using, sorry. So, sometimes people don't, again, look outside that in consumer land and think, well, what else is available to me? I've been a Windows user for all my life, so let me look at that MacBook. Absolutely. I've been a MacBook user all my life. Let me look at that Windows device. Absolutely. I've been using Windows devices all my life. Let me look at that Chromebook. Absolutely. I've been looking at Chrome all my life and I want something different. Let me look at Windows. Absolutely. We need to be able to do that and not stay in our particular niche. So think my tip number 9 to get here, we've talked about what the future might look like. What is unique and valuable at your school, in your department and in your classroom? How you start to compare technology companies, for example, in the world is you actually use a Gartner Magic Quadrant. Yes, if you're going out as an IT person, you say, I want to know who's doing really well in endpoint management, for example. This one is about data analytics tools and BI. Then you can see at this one, Microsoft's a leader and a visionary in the top right. So what's unique about your school? I'm not putting this in about a Microsoft thing. I'm just putting this in about your school. What makes you lead in the way? Why are you a visionary? What's your ability to execute? What are your results like? Why are you becoming a visionary? What are you doing in your IT department that's really good? We flag that with our school showcase school programs and MIE programs and the like. But really, really important for us to kind of think about this in a school way. So think about your own Gartner Magic Quadrant, I suppose, and how that connects in. But then don't forget about your school ethos and mojo. Add that sparkle, you know. For example, the Catholic systems that I work in at the minute have got their own ethos, right? This is a picture of the Rome Call to Ethics for AI, which the Catholic sector has kind of bought into, which is about the use of AI and things like that. Very different ethos and, you know, community feel, for example. So bring you a school and you a sparkle to your future vision and your strategy moving forward. So it's really, really important. So if I was to kind of summarize today, there are a lot of drivers for why we need to change. You know, even going back to global drivers such as antibiotic resistance, climate change, and food production. You know, there are big goals here. And then when we bring it down a level, we're thinking about personalization, the use of data, and bringing it across to IT, thinking about security, hybrid work, and data and AI. So there's a lot of trends happening. We can see that there's technologies available out there, such as the cloud, such as some of the cognitive services and AI tools and technologies and productivity services from Microsoft 365 to endpoint management tools like Microsoft Intune and Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Identity. All of those things super important to allow you to really innovate and drive. And then we've talked about 10 ways to really think about innovation in your environment, to try to bring those things to life, to jump that curve and go to the next level. So hopefully that's been a useful element of your time today. I really appreciate you coming to this session. Please reach out to us and reach out to your team across the Microsoft ecosystem. Everybody's got an account manager connected to them, and technology strategy is one of the things that we love talking about, whether it's Azure Cloud Adoption Framework or whether it's any of your Microsoft products that you'll be using. We've got lots of teams and partners also across Australia to help you. So thanks again for listening to this today, and hopefully you've taken something from it. Love to hear your feedback. Thank you.